Hey, welcome again to Accelerating Value. I am Mark Stoos, and each week I get to talk to some really amazing people about everything that it takes to create value, how they look at it, how they define it, how they plan for it, how they invest in it, how they realize whether or not they've achieved it, so the proof of it. We talk to all kinds of folks, right? Not just C-suite members. We go further down in organizations because if there's ever, there's a few great truths in life, and one of them is where you sit determines where you stand on many, many things. And so people see value at different layers of an organization. So we were really interested in that. We talked to VCs and family office investors. We talked to sales guys. We talked to people who are mainly customers, so like procurement people and things like that, about how they define value and think about value. So that is what we're all about here. And today, our guest is somebody that actually I have waited a really long time to talk to. and so Ayaz Malik is probably one of the deepest thinkers that I know. He really thinks about things not only, like deeply in kind of the stereotypical sense, but he looks at them on very much a multi-vector kind of basis. He's spinning the ball, he's thinking about it from this angle and that angle, and it makes him really, really interesting to talk to. He's a longtime veteran of the pharmaceutical industry. He's the new group marketing leader for digital strategy at Roche Pharmaceuticals, which is a major company in that space. Ayaz, really glad you're here, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you. Just one correction. So I'm the group marketing manager for digital strategy for the Roche Diagnostic Corporation in Indianapolis, okay, for the North America region. Yeah.
Right. And what is the relationship between that and Roche?
So Roche has two businesses, the pharmaceutical business and the diagnostic business, and I'm in the diagnostic house.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I trust that Ramadan was
good for you.
It
was absolutely wonderful.
And your family.
Yeah, it's a great experience. The whole idea is transformation. And so I feel refreshed and ready to go again.
So then this first question is made for you. Okay. All right. So both as a human being and a leader in the pharmaceutical industry, how do you understand value creation, realizing that it takes many forms, and they're all potentially really important? And so, how do you keep track of the value that's going on around you, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, on the professional side, obviously, we have value we create as a company for the world. So this is our altruistic piece of the value we bring to our patients, whether it be the therapies on the pharmaceutical side or the diagnostic solutions for the diagnostic piece. And so that's what drives, I think, the company, right, in the mission of doing now what patients need next, is how do we create the maximum value so that the right patient gets the right test at the right time, whether they're a patient or not, but they receive this at the right time. And that's what drives the company, which I value. Then on the personal side, when you think about creating value as an employee, that's what I value, is having this purpose of the company that allows me to think about the value I bring in each equation of everything I do that helps fulfill that goal. And then when I bring, value creation down to then for our customers, these are the hospitals and the institutions that drive in delivering either the therapy or delivering the diagnostic. It's important for us to make sure that, when we see value, that they see a value in a partner like us, that we're driving and giving the most, whether it be our instruments, our assays, or our diagnostic, or our therapies, that they're seeing a value in being able to then pass that on to their patients and their systems. And it also then transfers to the efficiencies and that the hospitals or the institutions realize in working with us as a partner, that we bring other subject matter expertise besides the solutions. And then there's value for the people that we work with, the employees that actually do this great work that brings us to medicine and the diagnostics to life. The value that I look at least I look at it connecting that side too, is that, what value do the people feel? And that's where the purpose comes in, where daily, we feel like we're committing and contributing to something that's of value to the world. On the personal side, I'm driven by a simple fundamental piece that I learned from my grandmother a long time ago, which is, serve others faithfully. And that has become my life mission. And so if I look at that, then being true to the Roche mission, it fits beautifully, right? That on a personal level, I want to create value by serving others where they genuinely feel a connection, that when they interact with me, or if I represent the company, that they say, that was better. It left me better than when I started. And that's really important.
Yeah, you're. I think a lot of people are listening to you just now talking about that, and one of the things that's striking is how few people feel that their personal value creation, their personal altruistic mission in life, is aligned with their employers. Yes. How do you think about that? How would you counsel someone who's kind of struggling with that, given the fact that you're not?
It's been a journey. I've worked in the advertising business where you serve multiple customers, and you could be selling anything from, tobacco to alcohol to food to anything. And what I started looking for is, what is something that I can be proud of, that I wake up every morning for and know that I'm serving others, and that it is not something that I can condone or say I don't want to do for people. Then around that time, as I was looking in this journey, this is about 20 years ago, when I was really trying to formulate, what do I want to work for? And healthcare became the focus, obviously. So I come from a line of doctors and people in the medical field. My father's one, is a pathologist, retired. But my mom passed away, and she died of, being misdiagnosed. And she ended up with sepsis and had, some form of the cancer that came forward very quickly and killed her in 10 days from the diagnosis to end. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, there it is right in front of me again. And lo and behold, right about that time, Roche knocked on my door and said, we want you to come and work for us. And I thought, okay, this is too coincidental. My dad's a pathologist. My mom died from cancer and sepsis and misdiagnosis. And I'm being asked to go work for a diagnostic company to lead their communication team in Tucson, Arizona. And they just bought a diagnostic company that's going to do tissue diagnostics focusing on cancer. Too many stars aligned there. And I thought, this is the focus. So I think for me, it was this divine intervention that led me to understand that I have this purpose now. And so that's led me to this part, right? To find the value that I can bring in bringing communication, marketing, digital, all these other things that I've been blessed to work in, to focus on this healthcare space and create value there.
One of the things that, so let's talk in that same, staying with that same line of thinking. One of the things that's really important to people a lot of times, particularly when they're in pain, is speed to value, right? So like I know that when I get a headache and I can take 2 Advil or 1 Advil, right? One of the things that I love about that is that in 15 minutes I don't have the headache anymore, right? And that I'm willing to kind of set aside some of the potential risks associated with that, right, in order to achieve that. And I find that also the bigger the challenge, right, the more people want it to be over with fast, right? When you kind of think about this, both in terms of helping people, serving people, and particularly given what Roche does, serving people who are, in some form of distress, maybe even extremists, right? Or from a marketing point of view, setting the right expectations around time to value. How do you think about this? How do you juggle this part of it?
Yeah,
knowing that everyone wants it
No, of
tomorrow,
course.
but
I
it's
mean,
not.
the needs are far away our capacity to execute right now, right? Even in the digital world, especially with the volume of change around us that's being brought by the tech companies, by even within our own organizations, desire to become more digitally focused. So, you see the transformation going on.
Right.
And I think that, the old adage, no pain, no gain, applies. And we can rush, and we, especially in a big organization like ours, we can rush and build something very quickly, but it often results in disaster, right? Because low adoption, people move on from careers and jobs and move on to other places, or resources dwindle because budget focus shifts to something else. So all these competing things happen. And something that's quick, like you said, you took the 2 aspirin, you formed the solution, and you put it in, but what happened to the adoption? I mean, from a marketing perspective, let me speak to that. For instance, we have what I call digital and technology residue sitting around. We have processes, tools, we have technologies we've paid for that we use maybe 1/10 the power for. We have, practices that are sitting around where the person already left, and I say, where did this practice come from? Well, so and so was here 10 years ago. Then why are we still doing it? And so these are the things that I think, it makes me ponder. And when I look at all this, so when you talk about time and value, they're absolutely correlated. But we cannot take cannot say enough about the fact of taking the time to formulate the right approach and making sure that we show the long vision. It may take 7 years, 10 years to get there, but that's the goal, right? It can be calibrated every year to adjust based on what's happening with market forces. But you got to have something you stick the ground in and say, this is what we're shooting for, and then keep walking people to it. But that one thing that you just take the 2 aspirin for and get it over with quickly is not going to create tremendous value. Maybe short term, check the box, value created. Long term, not
Right.
sustainable. And even more so now in this digital world and marketing world I'm finding that how do you help people keep up with the technology ramp and the marketing practices challenges ramp and the analytics you're involved in? How do analytics work with this to inform our all our decisions going forward? So if I correlate that back to our company, what I love about what we're doing is taking this methodical approach of letting things kind of develop. We're absolutely focused. There's a vision and there's a direction for where analytics and everything work. And we use a word called decision support. And you could take it down a path that label it, brand it, and package it, and there's your 2 aspirin taken, right? And here we are, we're marketing decision support. But what I love about what we're doing is the business is evolving with partners, external partners, internal partners, learning from them, technology learning. What do we have to build ourselves? What do we, bring a third party in to help us with? And we're methodically going forward in defining the organization, traditional business, what is a digital business in the future? And so the time that it takes to do that, a company has to be able to play the long game and have the vision to create the value over time. Whereas the companies I think that are focused on the short term win are not going to be around much longer. They won't be able to be there and sustain it. And I think that's the longevity of this company that I've come to admire and love so much, is that it gives people like me the space and the time to define strategy, value, the creation of that value, and allow the time to fail along the way. This is huge, right? Test it, fail it, and then be able to embrace that failure and say, what did I learn from it? And then go again. And so we may not be the fastest to market to create that value, but what I love about what we're doing is we take the time necessary to create the right value for that customer.
So that actually brings up it's the third leg, right? If time and value are the first two, risk is the
Yeah, sure.
third, right? And one of the things that I really saw when I was CMO at Honeywell Aerospace is that, kind of not at all dissimilar to your situation, it was a life and death business, right? If your products weren't the best, people unfortunately died in plane crashes,
Yeah.
right? So that culture was really, really strong, and you would want it to be strong. But it also had a tendency at that time to that same perspective on risk, that total risk
Yeah.
aversion, kind of permeated into the
Yeah,
business
of
of the
course. Yeah.
business.
Tenor was set.
How how do you kind of juggle that? Number one, do you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
juggle that inside of Roche, and how do you juggle
Yeah,
that?
obviously risk is a part of our risk assessment, right? Is a part of our business. You cannot be successful like this company has been, and I've only been a part of it for 11 years. But you're talking historically a 100-year-old company, right? How does it? You cannot survive if you're not good at risk management. And so, absolutely, there's people in here in this company that help us with those dialogues. I mean, when I was working in Switzerland as part of the team, we would routinely sit with some risk management people around, especially the communication function, right? Is how are we managing risk around communications? And it was always an interesting, and I always got a view that, okay, so this is big, right? There's a lot of people who work on this that are really good at this, that help bring forward risk to the business, whether it be compliance risk, financial risk, or whatever it might be, right? But they bring this forward as a dialogue. And so I think it has to be a deliberate focus of a company is to think about risk. And today, my goodness, in the digital and marketing world, analytics can show us risk. And whether we can see, for instance, how our customers are behaving, what are they consuming in content, what is the sentiment of their dialogue online, what is the volume of that dialogue, where are they, right? Are they in Europe, are they here? I mean, look at the things that we can see today that we could not see 10, 15 years ago through analytics. And bringing that back then to the marketing world, in where we look at it, my team, we depend on the analytics, we depend on voice of customer, we depend on being able to see this data to be able to say, what do we need to work on? And then, we get to work with amazing compliance, legal, and regulatory partners who bring forward, what risks we face with privacy laws, with, data protection laws, all these type of things that are now emerging. There's not any one view that's central. There's European GDPR and some, but not everybody's there, right? It's not a federated piece yet. And so here we are trying to do the best we can, but we have amazing partners that help us see risk. And then our job is to, of course, work with them to mitigate it. And
One of the things that the healthcare industry as a whole is kind of famous for in the popular mindset, right? Is in your advertisements, there's always the fine print,
yes,
right? Sometimes it's literally fine print. Other times it's somebody speaking a little on the fast side towards the end of the commercial or whatever, right? Outlining different risk factors. Do you feel like that you're ever in a place where you have to issue your own version of fine print around a marketing investment that you're proposing to make?
well, I think that there's an obligation from a claims basis, right, as to what we can and cannot say. And so I think that obligation comes forward of whether it be fine print or in the bold headline or wherever it might be, right? But we have to
Right.
declare certain things to make sure, and that's the integrity of this company too. I think is that we are compelled to and asked to by policy, right, and by practice is we have to disclose and be transparent. And so that's there. And so I see it, whether it be like, for instance, and the challenge here now is in the digital marketing world we live in, we could either deliver persona-based content that's highly gated and never give it to anybody and protect that way that says, you can't see this because you're from Europe and because it's only sold here in the United States. But realistically, this world is now looking at content that's, being sold all over the place. And so I think it is incumbent upon companies, excuse me, and us to be transparent, to have the kind of language that shows that this product is not sold here. Besides the all the other legal information that we have to have at the bottom of our pages and et cetera. But we don't hide things like opt-outs. When we send people information, they can opt out. We make sure it's very clear. So those are the kind of things I think from a own integrity perspective, we do feel the need, and we do I think a really good job of this. But yeah, there is fine print things that we need to bring forward very clearly.
Because that one of the things that we see over and over again in the analytics, and this runs across industries and companies. It gets a lot more intense though as the cost and or the risk levels go up, right, attached to the buy decision. And that is the importance of confidence and
Yes.
trust. You could argue, I think, in a very real sense, that it is the ultimate factor,
course.
right? And that you can have, and even the two or have they operate independently of each other. So, I mean, the story that I tell a lot as an illustration is that, I trust my wife totally, but I don't have any confidence in her ability to drive a Formula One race car.
Yeah.
And that illustrates the
Yeah, I
difference.
mean,
Right?
we want to be with people we trust. I mean, who wants to work with
Right.
people or have even a vendor or anybody, right, that you don't trust? We just don't do it. It's not in our nature. We run away from people, or we fight with them. I mean, those who we don't trust, we don't want to be with. And I think the same is true about us and our customers and our patients, that, there's a high degree of premium paid in this organization. And at least for me, one who wants to serve others faithfully, I can't cross that line where I say, you know what, I'm going to create a situation where Mark doesn't trust me. It doesn't occur to me to act disingenuously with you because my DNA is built this way, right? It doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes and screw up, but I will own them. And I think that's the part that, whether it be marketing, sales, no matter what it is, this trust has to be there, that, when I'm communicating to you, marketing to you, or whatever, that you can count on the fact that this is true. And speaking of also truth, content, think of the content that's out there that is non-compliant right now. We have worked hard across 90 some odd plus affiliates to create, the mechanisms that allow us. I mean, are we perfect? No. But we're working on it, right? Is that this focus on, hyper focus on the fact that the content we deliver to our patients, our doctors, our hospitals, institutions, whether it be economic data or whether it be, financial data or performance data or whatever it might be, that it is on label, compliant, has been approved by our regulatory legal teams, that we can do this in your market, right? Because certain markets restrict DTC, for instance. So we're highly mindful of the laws and policies and practices of each land, and they're not all equal. But I agree with you, that this trust is foundational. But the other part is, right, can our customers build our instruments and do the diagnostics, without us? So it's kind of a mutual benefit thing. Like you said, you can trust me for being a good partner, but you can't build the instrument yourself. I can't trust you to do that.
Right, exactly. How do you, this is more of a marketing question. How do you decide how long to wait before you kill a campaign?
That's a great question. So in my previous experience, most will create a campaign, they create the content, come in and run it, and then afterwards in a waterfall approach, right? Here's the measurement, and we're bemoaning the fact that it didn't work. And sure, we learn from it, right? But today's analytics allow us to see every step of the way how this is performing. And I think it's a disservice as a marketer to not bring this up to your leadership and other people to say how we're doing that in the old-fashioned way is a misuse of money and resources of this company. And so, and it needs to shift. And I would even submit that the word campaign itself needs to be rethought, that in this world of continuous engagement, we need to create content that's relevant, compelling, and curated properly so it's findable at the moment the person's looking for it. Not push it out and hope somebody finds it, in 2 weeks, or react to it in 2 weeks based on what we are doing internally. And that just requires to rewire our marketing brain, our budgeting brain, our activation brain, every single thing like that inside the company. So that's that multi-factor connecting the dots, that I start to look at, that we bring this together. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're so right about that. I mean, I think that one of the ways that I think of a campaign is it is an administrative bucket, and it is 100% inside out in perspective, because your audiences will not perceive a campaign.
Correct.
Most
right. Yeah, I mean, people. I mean, when was the last time you got online and said, "Let me look at Roche's campaign"? We don't behave like this. Or Nike's campaign on shoes. We're looking for shoes. Or a golf club, and we
Right.
go looking. We don't look at, oh, I wonder what TaylorMade's saying now about their club. I don't care, right? I mean, I'm looking for clubs. I'm going to talk to my peers, networks, etc. So we behave very differently. And our own primary research is showing, right, that now greater than 65% of the time, customers are engaging peer networks, and social and search and web, etc., before they come talk to a salesperson, even though a salesperson's a key part of the equation. But the marketing mix just shifted, right? It's no longer just the salesperson driving the instrument sale. It's now a whole host of factors around that person. And that makes marketing then, especially for people who are looking at innovation like me and strategy, we have to think differently. We have to surround the salesperson with more data, more information as to what's happening with their customer above the sales funnel prior to the sale happening. And I love the fact that our sales teams are actually hungry for this and are engaging with us. And so that's, and then also, just to mention this, but when we think about the word campaign, when we actually embed that in our budgeting process and say, what's your, then we give each marketer a campaign, and then we behave like that. We create the campaigns. So I'm also saying, why don't we just get rid of the word campaign and just talk about your marketing activity and then what content you're going to need to engage these people virtually on a continuous basis.
Yeah, I think that for a long time, marketers defined competence in a number of ways. One of which was orchestration.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
right. Yep.
Campaigns prima facie evidence of my ability
Yes.
to orchestrate.
Yes.
Right. What they did not realize, and if we get one question at Proof all the time, it's how do I prove the value of my campaign?
Yeah.
Right. The problem is that all the components of the campaign have different time lags to the value that they create. Right. And so in addition to not being perceived as a campaign by your audience, the different piece parts are cascading out into time in a way that disconnects them entirely from the idea of a campaign.
Absolutely. And that's why I call it, this is my terminology, is going continuous engagement, right? That how do we shift our marketing mindset to have this relationship with our target audiences on an ongoing basis like they want to have with us? And when they're searching for just like, say, high level, I wonder what's happening with efficiency in the pathology lab today. Where's our story? We should be telling the story. We're number one at this. We should be really good at this, right? So where's our story? We need to work on this kind of content and make sure it's findable for these people when they're looking for it, so that when they raise their hand and say, you know what, I really want to hear about this more. Now, here comes the sales engagement, right? To nurture them in through using marketing automation or other techniques to nurture them down the sales funnel. But to make this attractive, it's like the flower, with the pretty color on the front that attracts the bee. We got to get that part going first, more and more in this world, before we pull them down in to get the nectar. Just got to make that connection. Yeah.
And one of the ways that and this is not an either or, it's a both and situation, but just in one little teeny weeny part of what I do. So I post a lot on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. There's a lot on my page, and that's important. Yet what I have seen over and over and over again is that it's when I interact live with other people beneath someone else's post, right? That is far more.
You're having a conversation online. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it amazing how many people want to opine then? Right?
Right.
And I think we have to get comfortable with this, right? That it's okay that we're going to have these very diverse opinions and thoughts and ideas, but that's what I think makes it rich, is to be able to open up, like you said, you post something and you're able to open up this dialogue. I can tell you way back when, early in my days, when I first went back, when I was recruited to go to Tucson, and ahead of my curve, some other people were doing this. They had set up a blog. They were posting some, slides from the pathologists with some very new techniques and inviting other physicians to comment. This is before blogs and things were popular. Ended up with 15,000 followers and people engaging with them, just, doctors coming in and chatting. But none of us really fully realized that, this is a powerful mechanism that we need to harness. We were just playing with this stuff. And my colleagues were working on this. And later on, I'm really, oh my God, that was a huge audience that they tapped into. And look at what we're doing with this now today, 15 years later, right? Or 10 years later, sorry. And
Yeah, we were still stuck with
oh
press
my
releases
goodness.
back then. We thought,
Yeah. And
yeah,
we didn't have the analytics back then that could readily show us what was happening. But today, I mean, my goodness, what the data can show us about our audience as people. I mean, if we use it the right way with integrity, I think that, we can create a wonderful relationship with our external audiences and being able to give them the information they need so they can make the right decision at the right time.
Yaz, this has been a fantastic podcast. I really, everything that I had hoped for and more. Yaz, you just were a tremendous combination of the practical and let's just call it what it is, the
Yeah,
metaphysical.
thank you for
Right?
having me here. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful to talk to you. I mean, I appreciate all that you're doing with the analytics side. I love, like I said, as I told you before, I love your pragmatism. I love the wisdom you bring and the history and the dot connecting you put for all of us. And quite frankly, I love the fact that you provoke us, to talk about some of these things. So thank you for your part in this.
Thank you, man. All right, guys, we'll be back next week with another really great episode. Thanks so much.